I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I've got the month of May. Everybody say, I guess you say, what can make me feel this way?
What can make me feel this way? Indeed.
Keith, it is Friday, August the 26th. And here's a question for you, Keith. Did you choose that intro before the market crashed 1,000 points today?
I did. Well, I knew it was going to be a cloudy day, clearly. And despite
cloudy.
Yeah, despite the clouds, and here's my front page of my newsletter. Despite the clouds, there is still sunshine somewhere.
Well, there's always you're the kind of person lived through a monsoon and a lunar eclipse, and you'll still find some sunshine. That's what makes you the CEO investor you are. So you're always going to see some sunshine. Where's the darkness, though? I only ever see darkness and never see the sunshine. Where's the darkness, Keith?
Well, look, if you were brought up on the Eastfield Estate in Scarborough, which, by the way, they built 3 miles out of town so that the rich people didn't have to look at the poor people, you would never be able to assume there's a dark side after you escape that, because nothing could be that dark. So there can only be good things. That's the truth. But this week, there is lots of good things, actually. That's why I chose the title, nothing to do with the stock market. It's just that almost every story I read that I liked was about something positive. The essays of the week focus on that. If I zoom in here,
there's some interesting ones. Let's start with your Snowflake stellar quarter. Is there any company more inappropriately named than Snowflake?
Grinder.
Yeah. Well, except Grinder is about grinding. What does Snowflake do?
I actually use it at Signal Rank. Snowflake is a data warehouse. So basically, you can put lots of data in there. To give you a sense of it, I have 1 million rows of data which are sourced originally from Crunchbase that look at every funding round ever. And I put it in Snowflake. And Snowflake then gives me a query interface where I can say things like, tell me every seed round that happened in 2011, and then let me calculate what happened to those companies. How many died? How many went on to do really well? What kind of money did they make for their investors? So it's basically a data store with a query interface, and then it can output tables or graphs.
So is it a sort of a next generation database, a smart database? Is that?
It's a database with presentation tools on top. So you can build dashboards for teams where they see all their numbers and everything. So it's an enterprise product for data engineers, data analysts, and then people producing internal products for monitoring.
And the point about leading this was the week newsletter with Snowflake is that they had a stellar quarter, at least in your language.
Yeah, their revenue jumped 83% year over year, which for a company that's already public, that's a big growth rate. They did just short of 500 million in revenue in the quarter, so that's a run rate of roughly 2 billion. And their shares went up 23% yesterday. I haven't actually looked today what happened to them. Let's take a look and see what happened today. Snowflake, did it still go up? Yeah, it still went up today, actually.
It went up. Wow.
Yep. Despite the market. So, and I will say, because I use it, it's really good at what it does. I've been playing around with the language is called SQL, Structured Query Language.
Okay, so you like it. It's a toy, blah, blah, blah. So what? I mean, there's always going to be some companies that are doing well. No one's ever denying that.
Well, you could say so. So what? I don't know if we
I mean,
really.
what's the significance? So they're a next generation data AI company. What does that tell us about the future of the market?
I don't think it speaks to the market at all. It speaks to,
Or the industry? I mean,
well, it speaks to innovation creates revenue, which creates value. That's
so
it.
it's a platform for innovators.
It's a platform for innovators, and as we know, the product of the stock market is money.
Right.
Basically, if you gave your money to Snowflake, I've got a nice little graph that shows it. But if you give your money to Snowflake back when they were raising their seed, this is their venture funding history. So if we zoom in on this chart there, if you did the B round, by the C round, you'd made 4 times your money, by the D, 16 times. By the time they did an IPO, you were at 255 times your money. Then today, you're at 480 times your money. At the peak of their stock price, you were at 990 times your money. So the last few months of correction have taken you from 990 times to 480 times, which my point in the editorial is that's hardly a hardship. And so the idea that, and this is more me reacting to some of the narrative around Silicon Valley where people are getting all doomy and gloomy. There's really no space to be doomy and gloomy in Silicon Valley.
But is this just a sort of subtle or not so subtle advertisement for Signal Rank that you're suggesting that if you use a product like Signal Rank, you might be able to pick out Snowflake? Because there are lots of other companies that don't succeed like this.
It isn't meant to be a subtle promotion of Signal Rank, because Snowflake obviously is way past the data which we could have influenced any.
No, but most people can't pick these. I mean, there's a 10,000 or 100,000 snowflakes, and there's only one real snowflake. So how do you distinguish between the real snowflake and the fake ones, the failed ones, the ones that I gotta say this, Keith, because I can't resist, the ones that melt.
The ones that melt. So actually, I wasn't thinking I was going to do this, but let me show you something, and I'll give you a sense of it. So this is Snowflake. I'm inside Snowflake here, and this is the dashboards for Signal Rank. And what Signal Rank does is it scores investors. So here is an investor score chart with names of funds, and right along here, there's a score.
So you basically, you score the investors, and then you aggregate the score on the investors, and you say, well, if they're good investors, this must be a good investment. Is that the logic of Signal PageRank?
No, you go further than that. So then what I do is I look at that list of investors, and I produce a list of companies that based on all the patterns, which I'm not allowed to disclose because that's our trade secret, but based on all the patterns, here is 328 companies that have yet to do a B round this year. So they're before the Snowflake stage. These 328 companies is a select list out of 6,500 B rounds that have happened this year to date. And so we can score companies very early in their life, and our percentage likelihood of them becoming a unicorn is 40% likely.
Well, PageRank is the next big thing. If you want to get in, you better be nice to Keith.
Signal Rank, not PageRank.
Signal Rank. You're gonna, if you want to get rich quick, Keith is the guy to do it. Jump on his bandwagon. And there is more proof. It's not just Keith. There's the WorldCoin founder is starting an AI venture business, Keith, which isn't entirely different from Signal Rank. Did they steal your idea?
Who knows? Because I don't know what their idea is. All I know is what the story is saying. But it did get my attention for the reason you're saying. This is Max Novenstern. He was and is the co-founder, and he used to be the CEO of WorldCoin. So he's either left or been fired. And he's now working on a new venture called Manna, as in manna from heaven. And his new venture is an attempt to apply artificial intelligence to the business of venture capital. He calls it an AI venture capitalist that will run autonomously on the blockchain, or BlackRock for the new economy.
Ooh.
So
He's
apparently,
muscling in, Keith. Can't you send some big Man United supporters round to his house and remind him that you control this space?
it's all good. Firstly, I don't control the space. Secondly, it's a huge space. There's the ability to put billions of dollars a year to work, and the most I'm targeting is 300 million a year. So
In all seriousness, don't the current VCs use AI? It's hard to believe they don't.
they actually do, Andrew. I visited Lightspeed Ventures recently, a couple of years ago, so not that recently. They have a whole machine learning and AI team that now they're focused on specific questions. So the thing about AI is it's very specific.
You've got to eat your own dog food. VCs are becoming tech companies. But according to Benedict Evidence, Keith, Netflix, which we've always thought of as a tech company, isn't one. What's going on there?
Yeah, this is a really good article from Benedict. Actually,
he's good. Yeah.
Yeah, he basically he's asking the question. Is Netflix finished? Was the original question.
Yeah.
And that's because a lot of people, after they lost about 1 million subscribers, have predicted the end of Netflix. So what has a negative sounding title is actually a very positive article about how Netflix is using good quality content in large quantities to create an audience that doesn't go away. And he uses the example, which you'll be very familiar with as a British-born football fan, of Sky and Rupert Murdoch buying the rights to soccer, and then you had to buy a satellite dish and a receiver to be able to watch the soccer. And guess what? Everyone bought a satellite dish and a receiver because we all wanted to watch soccer. His point is that Netflix is following that game plan. But in this case, it's not soccer. It's high quality drama, comedy, movies, and the like. So it's a long read, and it's very well researched.
It's interesting that I've always thought Netflix, I've always trusted Netflix. Like Amazon, I've always thought they're a perpetual winner. Whenever they get written off, they always disprove their disbelievers. No one's ever really written a good book on Netflix. For journalists listening or watching, write a good book on Netflix. Too many books on Google and Facebook and Amazon and Apple. Not enough on Netflix. Speaking of Apple, your old friend Jean-Louis Gasset has a piece out about Apple Car, suggesting that they may have spent a bit too much time and money on it, and we're not seeing anything yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's his point, but he starts with this screenshot, which the screenshot's kind of interesting. That is a car with Apple CarPlay taking over not just the little screen, but the entire dashboard.
And it's not hard to imagine, really, is it?
Well, they showed it off already. That this is the next iPhone. For cars that support it, will let the iPhone take over the entire dashboard. And so they are going in this direction. And a little bit like when people said Apple are going to make a TV, what they really ended up with is Apple TV software, which now runs on most TVs and Roku and Android TV. So part of what you wonder if you might be saying, look, Apple isn't going to build a car. They're just going to build a software for a car and on the in-car experience. And I definitely think that is true. But
I wonder, thinking out loud here, do you remember in the old days at CES, you always used to have a Microsoft house and it was always terrible. Why does Apple waste its time with a car? Why don't we just have an Apple house?
I wouldn't well, let me answer that in a second. Just before let me just finish one thing on the car. Jean-Louis does say Apple probably will build a car. He implies it, but he makes the point that, like everything else that Apple does, they only go to market once they've totally nailed it. and he charts lots of failures. And in most companies, you think failure is a bad thing. In Apple's case, failure is the engine of success. They fail a lot internally before they go to market. And he's, in a way, praising their internal resilience.
Have they? Did they fail with the? I'm showing everyone my Apple Watch. Is that a failed failure?
Well, it's the biggest selling watch in the world, so I think you got to say it's a success. For Apple, though, success probably needs to be north of $10 billion of annual revenue. I actually don't know how much the watch makes for them. We can probably find out whilst we're doing the show.
What about the Apple House?
The Apple House, Apple, this is like a secret insight. Apple focuses on people. Okay, so if you look at a person through their assets and their wealth and what they spend money on, their ear pods are all about the ears. Apple TV is all about the eyes.
There's the ears. I've got everything. I've got the ear pods. I got the headphones. I'm an Apple person. I live in an Apple house.
Right. So the first thing Apple serves is your sensory intakes, your body. The next thing is they're going to start servicing what you do outside of the real world. And the Apple Card is a good example of that, financial stuff.
And that's a huge success. We talked about that last week.
You're right. And then if you stick with a human being and you then move out to the next circle, a car, and the circle beyond that, a house.
And then a city, and then a country, and then we'll all be living in Appleville, Keith.
Well, we might well live in
a world, just an Apple world.
Do you follow, this is an aside, but do you follow this prefabricated house market at all?
Is that Apple?
No, there's a whole industry of prefabricated houses where they build it in a factory and then they come and dump it on a piece of land for you and then they plumb it in and everything. And
John Murillo did that. And I think, if you're smart and good, competent like John, you can do it. So who are Man United playing in the Champions League, Keith?
They're not in the Champions League, Andrew.
Oh, that's a shame. But there is Champions League streams from Paramount. That's another essay of the week. That must be your Freudian manifestation of wanting to be in the Champions League.
Yeah, this is well, I put this in because it's the theme we've been talking about, which is live sports and streaming. And, the US is not the most promising market for the game of football, as in soccer. But despite that, it's becoming a huge...
Yeah, I think it is quite a big market, isn't it?
It's certainly getting...
It was.
It's getting way bigger. So Paramount have locked in the next 8 years of the Champions League for streaming rights. They paid $1.5 billion for it, compared to $250 million a year previously.
It doesn't seem like a lot, actually. So that gives them the right to stream everything?
All Champions League games.
Well, I'll be paying for that.
So
are you going to be paying for that, Keith?
I already do, and I will. I mean, Paramount Plus is one of the apps that you get on your TV or your Apple Box or whatever it is you use to watch.
Yeah.
And I think it's like $6 a month or something.
I would argue that what Paramount needs to do is change their name and their brand. I think they've got a good product, but Paramount sounds like a movie theater chain. Speaking of movies, YouTube making its own video chip. They're getting in the business of soup to nuts company too, not only hosting videos, but having their own chip. Do they really need that, YouTube?
So this is a video transcoding chip, and the story comes from Protocol, which I highly recommend as a great read. And what it starts with the fact that YouTube and Google have built chips for AI, dedicated chips. And it says that the team that have been doing that realized that video transcoding was very expensive. So they've now got chips that outperform, according to this article, outperform NVIDIA chips at transcoding video. And transcoding is when, if you're watching YouTube on your phone and the original video is high definition or 4K, Transcoding is the ability to shrink it down and stream it to your phone in real time without
Yeah.
it. So it's a big need for them, and they're building their own chips.
Well, I assume you've made YouTube then Startup of the Week, have you?
I haven't. We'll come to that in a minute, but it's worth saying Apple's M1 chip this is a trend now. And this week, Intel, I didn't put it in the newsletter, but Intel announced that they are embracing a technology called chiplets. Chiplets is where chip is made up of lots of subchips, which have distinct purposes. And that's what Apple's M1 is. So,
is there any company that is more toast than Intel? Can they come back?
You know, it's interesting. The new CEO, who's an old timer at Intel, has been given a poison challenge, and he's doing a brave job of trying to modernize Intel. And
so basically, all these chips from Apple and YouTube, they're all challenges to Intel, one way or the other, right?
Well, they certainly take market share away from Intel. Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Well, there we'll come on to Startup of the Week in a minute. It's not YouTube, but it could be. There's no That Was the Week without mention of Keith's two favorite people, Elon Musk and Adam Newman, and they cohabitate this week. How are they connected?
They're connected because everyone hates both of them, or at least a lot of people.
I don't know if you can use the word hate with Musk. You can with Newman. Musk is I just think you just have to shake your head. It's like looking at a strange animal in a zoo and just wondering how they exist.
Yeah, I personally like both of them because I like people who push the envelope. But that said, the news is Musk's case against Twitter has gotten stronger.
Yeah,
because an internal whistleblower has exposed the fact that Twitter really doesn't pay a whole lot of attention to the spam bot. Musk has been claiming
surprise, because it's not in their interest, right? They want to inflate their numbers. So does this mean that actually Musk's arguments about Twitter are actually serious, and that may have convinced him not to buy the whole thing? Or is he just using it as an excuse?
I think both things can be true. I do think that these points are serious. He subpoenaed Jack Dorsey to come. Now, Jack today announced the biggest mistake he ever made was to make Twitter a company rather than a protocol. So Dorsey is no fan of the current Twitter setup. So he's definitely.
Does that mean that Musk has declared war on Dorsey?
No, Dorsey's going to back Musk.
So when that says Elon Musk subpoenas Dorsey, what does that mean?
Well, a subpoena is an instrument to force someone to testify.
Well, why does he need a subpoena if Dorsey's in bed with him?
I think it gives Dorsey an excuse that he had to do it as opposed to wanting to. That's all.
So if Dorsey had his way and Twitter was a protocol, what would that mean?
Twitter as a protocol would be what we've talked about on the show in the past, a Web3 version of Twitter, where a bit like email, anyone could build a client and publish to it or take from it.
Well, we've talked about that for years, right from the beginning.
Yeah, we have. But I agree with Dorsey that is what it should be. I think he's right.
And is this case going to get settled, compromised? Someone will pay someone something, and that will be the end of it.
Hard to tell. It's coming up soon. It's October the 17th, so we'll see. But I think the court is going to be minded to side with Twitter. So Musk is putting a lot of pieces in place to make that hard for them to do.
Did Paramount buy the rights to show it?
They should, shouldn't they? Someone should. I don't know if it's in closed session or if it can be seen, but it would be fascinating to watch.
And a final note on Newman. What's he up to? He got his money, right? So he's back in play.
He got his money. I did learn in the meantime that Andreessen have $35 billion under management. So this is a 1% bet for them.
Yeah.
So, it's not an unreasonable bet. Is he
getting his hair cut? I hope so.
He may already have it cut because this is clearly an old picture. Who knows? I haven't seen a picture that's recent. I don't know if you have. And then there's the anti-Newman.
Yeah, who definitely looks like the anti-Newman. Who is he?
So this is a guy doing a similar business in real estate to the one everyone thinks Newman is funded to do, and this guy's already doing it and doing quite well at it, but he doesn't raise money and he's kind of more modest. So he's called Bill Smith of all things. So
Yeah, it's hard to be more modest than Adam Newman, isn't it?
yeah, but I thought it was a good piece from. Well done to TechCrunch for finding this guy and writing that story. That it's a great story.
And so let's get to Startup of the Week. It's not YouTube. It's not Intel. Who is it, Keith? And it's not Netflix.
It is the Thompson family of Canada, of the famous Thomson Reuters Thompsons, who have a family office, which is a venture fund, who have now reached the age of 25 and have published a very lengthy piece about their history of venture investing, which is a really good read. And I made them Startup of the Week just because I think people should go and read what they've been doing. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's an impressive. I read it. It's an impressive achievement because you'd assume these kind of company funds would know what they're doing. Is it just a people thing, Keith? That
yeah,
you've got a lot of money and you put that money in the hands of smart people, it will grow. Is that the basic?
Yeah, and the Thompson family are an entrepreneurial family. I mean, their whole company is basically entrepreneurial. By the way, a good friend of yours and mine, who is Leo Zarea, who was a TechCrunch lawyer, he actually represents Tom Best, I think.
But they're Canadian.
They are Canadian, but they obviously do a lot of work. Most of their investments here in the Valley. If you click on the story and go through to it.
Who's their most famous investment?
They've got lots. Here's a little picture of some of their investments. Singular, Lending
Have
Club.
you fed them into your AI database?
Oh yeah, they are in there. They are in there.
In your Snowflake?
Lots and lots of companies.
Well, that's impressive. That's congratulations. I'm sure they're nice. I mean, they're Canadian, so they're bound to be nice people. I bet they're nicer than Andreessen. They don't look like an exploding volcano, right?
Exactly.
And finally, Keith, tweet of the week.
Plural. Tweets of the week from Jason Lemkin. Jason Lemkin.
Not Jason Calacanis, right?
No, Lemkin.
I'm surprised that Jason has not cornered the market, and you're not allowed to use the word Jason unless it's Calacanis.
Exactly. Well, he does. Jason Calacanis does have @Jason on Twitter, but so Jason has Lemkin has Jason LK. He is he's actually a super good person. He runs SaaStr, SaaStr, which is the event that brings all the SaaS companies together. It's a very successful event.
It sounds like one of the more boring events in history.
Only if you're not into SaaS, but if you're into SaaS, it's a must attend.
Are you into SaaS, Keith?
I am sassy.
I'll have to ask Jeanette.
I'm definitely sassy. Now, so two tweets. Number one is he announced that his 5-year-old fund has made 4 times its money already, and he made this sub comment, which is it took him a bunch of years to understand that writing the 3rd check into a company is not a good use of money. Why do I care about that? Because Signal Rank writes the 3rd check. So it's great to have someone go on the record saying somebody else should do this, not us, because that is exactly what I'm doing. But the second one is more.
I mean, why is it? What does that mean? Suboptimal use of his resources. He already knows the company. Why? What resources is he using?
Well, let's imagine somebody gives you $1 million as a seed round and then gives you 5 million as an A round.
Yeah.
It comes to the B round, and in order to keep their shares, they have to give you 15 million. He's saying that's a bad decision, that you shouldn't give the 15 million. Why? Because the returns of that 15 will lower the returns from the other 2, because it's such a big amount of money. It puts the bar way higher in terms of the outcome to keep the same gain, if you like. So he's saying you shouldn't do that, and I agree with him that seed and A round investors shouldn't do the B round, but it should be done, and they should get the reward for having negotiated it, and that's where I come in. but this isn't about me. His second one is more interesting. It's about Getty Images. You know Getty Images?
Yeah.
So Getty Images, Saul Klein, who was born in your neck of the woods in North London, his uncle runs Getty Images, or at least did. And Getty Images has had 3 lives at least. And it last week did a SPAC. And we thought SPACs were dead, but clearly this one isn't. And it got a valuation of $10 billion. Why? Because it has revenues of close to $1 billion. And what this tweet is saying is you have to click through and read the whole thread, but it's saying that Getty Images is only growing 4% a year, but it's valued at 10 times its revenue. And the reason is because the markets in this post-correction period are valuing revenue more than they're valuing growth. And that actually is a huge point. That when the markets value revenue more than growth, it means the markets have become very conservative. They want to bet on what's already there, not what might come. And this SPAC being successful is a great example of the current state of the markets. So that's why I chose it.
And how does that help Signal Rank?
Doesn't.
Or Manchester United?
Doesn't. It probably helps Spurs because they are not growing. They've got fixed revenue.
Well, it helps Spurs because Saul Klein's uncle is
but Saul's
of the faith. He's part of the Yid Army, so I think
Saul is an Arsenal fan, though. Can you believe that?
I can.
If you're watching, explain to Andrew how a guy from North London who's Jewish can be an Arsenal fan.
Unfortunately, there are quite a few of those. But my only media recommendation of the week is watch the Arsenal documentary, especially if you're an Arsenal fan, because you will be so humiliated. There's nothing more amusing. All Spurs fans are watching it. Well, that was the week for August the 26th, 2022. It will be September next week, Keith. Maybe there'll be some real news that we can get our teeth into.
See you, Andrew. Bye, everyone.